Good morning. This is Frater Ralph with Temple of the Infinite Universe. Today we're going to be talking about your spiritual path. Which path is right for you? And on one level, this is really a no-brainer, an obvious question with an obvious answer. But I'm also going to take it down to a few other levels. Obviously, I think that the spiritual path that is right for you is whatever spiritual path you feel is right for you. As long as it resonates with you, as long as you are getting something out of it and putting something into it, as long as you are seeing changes in your life that are positive, that make you feel good about who you are and place you on a path of self-discovery, then I would say that is a spiritual path that is right for you. In my opinion, it should also be a path that is founded in love. A lot of religions teach love on a very superficial level. They teach love which is conditional, that we love people who are like us. We love people who are members of our community. We love people who are members of our temple. We love people who are members of our church or our mosque or our synagogue. But people who are outsiders, people who are not members of our community, not in our little niche, well, we don't love them. They need to become like us before we can love them. Most of the times this is not stated as obvious as that, but it's the unwritten rule, it's the unspoken law that if you want to be loved by this spiritual community, you have to be like this spiritual community or a part of this spiritual community. Now, that's not the love I'm talking about. The love I'm focusing on is unconditional love, kind of love that's described in Christianity as agape, or in Buddhism as metta, or hesed, I believe it's called, in Judaism. And this is God's wide open, all-embracing, unconditional love. You don't do anything to merit it, or you don't even have to draw breath to merit it. All you do is simply be that which you are and accept this love from the divine. This is a love that knows no bounds, a love that places no conditions upon itself, love which gives itself freely. And any religious path, any spiritual walk that teaches this form of love and encourages growth in this form of love, because this kind of unconditional love, it's not something that we are, that's not easy to emulate. It's not something that most of us have been raised with or taught about from childhood. Most of us have been taught conditional forms of love, that I will love you if you measure up, or I will love you if you do this for me. But the idea of just loving without condition, without boundaries, is something that speaks to us on a soul level, but it's something that on a physical level we don't always see. And some of us may not normally see it at all in our daily lives. But it's there. And it's something that we are called to grow in. And if you're part of a religious community or spiritual community that teaches this, then that's a good community to stick with. And any spiritual community that teaches self-improvement, things like forgiveness, things like patience, perseverance, making positive changes in your life, allowing you to grow as an individual, that's a good one to stick with. So whatever spiritual path that feels right to you and teaches you these things is a good one to stick with. But now, not all communities teach these things. There are several communities out there that teach just the opposite. Instead of unconditional love, they teach conditional love. Instead of forgiveness, they may teach vengeance and retribution. So if you can take a look around at the community you are a part of now, whatever that community may be, and say that it feels right to you, and that your community teaches the things that are important to you, things that will help you grow, then by all means, stick with that community. But now, if you are part of a community that is not teaching things that you are comfortable with, that asks you to believe things that you cannot believe, and that you do not feel right about expressing, then you may consider changing that spiritual community, changing your spiritual path. And this is not a decision to be taken lightly. I believe that we are born into certain spiritual paths for a reason. It may be to learn from that tradition, to learn from that path, and it may be to fulfill the role of a teacher, to express new ideas, to get the community to understand new ways of thinking, new ways of being a people of the divine. But again, if you feel that you're in the wrong place, if you feel like you cannot express yourself openly and honestly where you are at, if you feel like you're spinning your wheels, then by all means, change your spiritual path. Now, along this line, some people think that if they get burned out in the church or the religious institution that they were born into, or their latest church that they took up, they take the path of the fallen away. Well, I'm going to say the fallen away Catholic, but this applies to other people too. You may be a fallen away Catholic, you may be a fallen away Buddhist, you may be a fallen away Baptist. Some folks, if they feel like they've been burned in their first spiritual community, they feel like falling away and just going along their own path, going along their own way without any kind of community or any kind of people, traveling companions, you might say, any kind of teacher, mentor, community backing them up. And here we see like the fallen away Catholic, the solitary practitioner in any number of spiritual walks. And I would advocate, strongly suggest, that whatever path you're walking, if you feel like it's a lonely path, don't settle for being alone. Look for traveling companions. Open yourself up to becoming part of a wider community. There are a lot of them out there. We're just one. In our interfaith, internet, global spiritual community, we're open to all people from a wide variety of paths, and we welcome each and every one with the attitude of love, with the attitude of tolerance, with the attitude that I'm not called upon to be the teacher to each and every person that's a part of our spiritual community. I may fill that role from time to time, but I see myself as a fellow student. I am here to learn from everybody who's a member of this community, just like other people who are a member of this spiritual community are called upon to be fellow students and to learn from the other members here. So it's not a spiritual hierarchy where we have one almighty teacher or a group of almighty teachers, and everybody else is just supposed to sit down, shut up, and listen. It's a spiritual community where there is a give and a take, where everybody is free to speak their own truth and to share what Spirit has taught them, as long as this is conveyed in the attitude of love, in the attitude of tolerance, in the attitude that I alone do not have the full truth, but I am here to become more fully aware of the whole truth. So, if you don't have a spiritual community, if you don't have a church or a temple, if you're out there on your own, you don't have to stay there unless of course, you like being the lone wolf. But I had one guest on one of my other radio shows, again called Temple of the Infinite Universe, who spoke about yoga, Kavita, who has a yoga studio in British Columbia, Canada. And I asked her the question, how do you learn yoga if you don't have a yoga studio close to you? Is there like a DVD program that you can buy and teach yourself? Are there books that you can read to teach yourself? And of course, she was happy to recommend books. She was happy to recommend other programs that you can access, on the internet. But she did say that there is no substitute for a good old-fashioned teacher. And it took a while for this to sink in with me. But I saw the wisdom in this. You can read from books, you can watch DVD programs, and in these books and in these DVD programs, we see a one-size-fits-all type of attitude being expressed. That this works for the vast majority, and this might work for you, but you don't have the guidance of a professional teacher, advisor, guru, or mentor to be able to work with you, get to know you, and then recommend specific practices that can and will speak to you. And to me, a professional teacher or mentor is like a guide, a person who can work with you one-on-one to get to know you on a spiritual level as well as on a physical level, get to know you as a human being, and then be able to guide you, not tell you, where to go and what to do and how to do it, but to guide you, saying, okay, this practice may be of benefit to you. And, sometimes when it comes to a guru or a teacher or a mentor, we may need somebody to teach us specific things to help us to advance along our spiritual path. And other times we may simply need somebody to listen. Some person that can just forget about being the teacher of the hour or the almighty priest, guru, or advisor, and just sit and listen. Listen to what we have to say. Listen to our problems. Listen to what is bothering us, what is eating us alive. And then allowing the seeker to express that side of themselves. And oftentimes when we do this, 9 times out of 10, whatever problem it was that was bothering the seeker, after they have sat down and talked about it, many times they answer their own questions. They discover the answers to their own problems. So in those cases, they didn't really need a teacher to tell them what to do and how to do it. They just needed a sounding board. Excuse me. They just needed a sounding board. Some person willing to sit down and spend the time to listen, to allow the seeker the freedom to find their own answers. But first they had to express themselves to another living human being. And that's one of the virtues of having a spiritual teacher, a real live spiritual mentor. Now, there are a lot of things on the internet that call themselves mentoring programs, where you can go online and you can buy DVDs and books and apps and whatnot from great spiritual teachers. But that's not what I'm talking about. These are recordings or books, material that are created with that one-size-fits-all mentality. That, this works for the majority of my students, so this will probably work for you. And if it doesn't, well, then I got this other book you can buy, and hopefully that will work for you. Or I've got this other DVD you can buy, and maybe that will work for you. But what I'm talking about when I'm talking about finding a mentor, finding a teacher, finding an advisor, is somebody that will sit down and listen to you one-on-one. Face-to-face would be perfect, I think. A lot of times, though, that may not be a possibility. Sometimes we have to connect with folks who are not members of our physical community. We may have to try to connect with folks that live halfway around the world. And so in those cases, we may have to sit down and connect over Skype or through the email or over the phone. But it's important, to me anyway, that we connect with people one-on-one, that we connect with someone that we can accept as our teacher, as our advisor, as our listener, our spiritual friend that can help us to work out our issues, our problems, both by teaching and by simply listening. And self-help books, DVDs, and CDs are not the answer for this, not in my opinion. There is no substitute for a genuine, living human being to help us find our way through this world. Someone who has shared similar experiences, someone who has similar goals and objectives, someone who is on a similar path. And a lot of us may think that, we're on a spiritual path that is truly all our own, that there is nobody else there like us. And I used to think like this. I used to think, oh boy, my spiritual path, I started out in this life as a Catholic Christian, and then I began to think more along the lines of an American Catholic rather than a Roman Catholic. And I thought that I was the only person out there that was having these ideas. And of course, today you sit down and Google American Catholic, oh, you'll find dozens of churches out there that call themselves American Catholic rather than Roman Catholic. And then I began to think along the lines of Eastern Orthodox Christianity, began to learn about that. Then I began to think along the lines of Buddhism. And of course, Buddhism is a minority religion, at least in the United States, but there are plenty of Buddhists out there. And, I would reach out over the internet and learn from people like Thich Nhat Hanh, Ajahn Brahm of the Buddhist Society of Western Australia, and would find out that, there were an awful lot of people out there who were born and raised Catholic and went over to the Buddhist side of the fence. And so I found in those communities, I had a lot of folks very similar to me that were walking that same path. And so I didn't have to go on my road alone. I had plenty of traveling companions, plenty of fellow students, and a whole variety of teachers. All I had to do was Google them. And then I began to have feelings. Now, my spiritual path is not unique, but it does sound kind of convoluted as I go through it. I began to study uh, Hinduism and began to have some experiences, some revelations there. And over time, I have come to the conclusion that my spiritual path, my personal spiritual path, is kind of like a synthesis of many different spiritual paths. And the reason for this is that through the practice of meditation and the self-discovery that this has afforded me, I've come to understand that over the course of probably 2,000, 3,000 years, if not more, I have been just about everything. I mean, I am a Heinz 57 mixture. In my family background, I'm a mixture of German and Irish and Scottish and English and Canadian and French, and I don't know how many other strains are in my bloodline. And I would identify myself as a Heinz 57 mix. Spiritually, I'm finding out by accessing these past life memories through the practice of meditation that I am also a Heinz 57 mix. I've been pagan back in the days of the old Roman Empire. I've been Jewish around 1st century and previous to 1st century. I've been Buddhist. I've been Hindu. I don't know, I haven't accessed any memories of being Muslim, but it would not surprise me to begin uncovering those memories as well. In the course of my lifetimes, numerous as they are, I've been everything. My parents used to think it was really kind of weird that as a child, I would see the Catholic priest conducting the services, and then I would go home and begin to mimic the Catholic priest, offering up the Mass, and would do it, from their understanding quite well. And I always thought, as a young child, that seemed kind of odd to me too, when I was told these stories, but not anymore. Because I have a very strong feeling that I have been a Catholic priest in previous lifetimes. Just like I've been Jewish in previous lifetimes and pagan in previous lifetimes. And for me, when I set about trying to learn about other religious paths, it's not a process of learning something new. For me, it's a process of remembering the things that I already know and have already experienced. So for me, it's a little bit of book learning. I need the right books to kind of point me in the right direction. But then I also need the time to just sit down, reflect, and meditate, and remember my past lessons, and to bring them out in this current incarnation. So for me, my spiritual path, which seems kind of convoluted, is a mixture of every other spiritual path I have walked in previous lifetimes. And I see my role right now, my mission in this lifetime, as being to remember, to recapture these bits and pieces of previous lifetimes and to form them into a synthesis, something that I can learn from in this lifetime and something that I can pass along to others in this lifetime. And it may seem that this convoluted role of being a Catholic, Christian, Hindu, Jewish, Buddhist with past life memories, and add into the mix also pagan and a few other things, may seem like a very, very unique spiritual path. But you know what? There are all kinds of other people walking this path. I'm married to one. This is, my wife is the one person that I think has helped keep me sane through this process of remembering, because, She also has these past life memories. She also can tell me stories about what she was in previous lifetimes, being a mixture of this, that, and the other thing. So even those of us who are walking spiritual paths that seem odd, may seem downright crazy to outsiders, they're not unique to us. There are many other people who have walked these paths and have found out, learned things through their own experiences, found out through their own trials and errors, things that they can pass along to us. And so if you're walking a spiritual path that seems odd, that seems unique, that doesn't easily fit into your average church or temple or synagogue, don't despair, don't lose heart, and don't give up on finding a spiritual community. Spiritual community is important. It gives us a group of people that we can learn from, that we can socialize with, that we can fellowship with, even if it's only over the internet. And if we can find a spiritual community that serves our purposes, our needs, and it's in a physical community around us where we can go and see people face to face and just love one another and enjoy one another's company, I mean, that's excellent. I've got my own little physical spiritual community like that right here at home. I was lucky enough to marry somebody who was spiritually just like me, even though I didn't realize it when we got married. I hadn't yet accessed those past life memories. I'm not really sure if she had yet at that time either. But there was something that pulled us together, something that intuitively said, this is the one for you, or this is one of the possibilities that will help you in your spiritual life, in your spiritual development. And we both listened to that inner urging, and it's been a path of discovery for 17 years ever since. So that said, and I like to recap here, the spiritual path that is right for you, don't confuse it with what other people tell you is right for you. You may be walking a path that very few other people are walking. It may be something that you consider to be radical, maybe something that other people around you will consider to be radical, and it may very well be something that other people around you will try to dissuade you from. And if the path seems right to you, if you are learning from it, if you are growing from it, if it speaks to you, don't worry if it doesn't speak to your friends and neighbors and family. Do your own thing, go your own way, but don't go there alone, unless you really want to. But even those of us who walk pretty weird, seemingly radical spiritual paths, to others they may not seem radical at all. They may seem rather boring and humdrum. And others may be walking that same spiritual path and be able to serve as mentors, teachers, advisors, listeners, friends. And it's important to have that connection, to have that connection of friendship, to have that connection of a student-teacher relationship or a fellow student relationship. Because we're not put into this world to go our own way and to do everything alone. We are put into this world to learn more about love. At least that's my view on it. We are put in this world to learn how to love one another, to reach out and share love, to spread love, ultimately to be love. And love doesn't go off into a corner and hide itself away. It gives itself freely. And it takes a while for us to learn that lesson. Sometimes love involves getting hurt. And after getting hurt, whether it's in a spiritual relationship or a marital relationship or a sexual relationship, After getting hurt, we don't want to be hurt again, and we tend to withdraw, and we tend to pull away. And we may need to be by ourselves for a long time, maybe a few months, maybe a few years, maybe several years. But after we heal, after getting hurt, we have to, in my opinion anyway, take that leap again. Reach out in faith. Try to form friendships. Try to form relationships with other folks that are walking a similar path. And open ourselves up to the joy and wonder and help and fellowship that building these relationships provide. And again, this is not something that you can get from books or DVDs or programs that are prepackaged. Those things can help, but there is no substitute for having a real live relationship with a real live mentor, guru, advisor, fellow student along the way. And so I encourage you, if you're on a spiritual path that speaks to you, then by all means stay upon it, no matter what your friends and neighbors may say. If you're on a spiritual path that is right for you and you seem to be walking it alone right now, then take the time to look out, reach out, investigate. Try to connect with other people that are also walking either the same path you're on or a similar path, because no matter how unique you think you are, there's a few other people that are going down the same road, thinking that they too are all alone in the universe. And none of us are all alone in the universe. This is Frater Ralph reminding you to walk your walk, be yourself, and until we meet again, have a blessed day.